Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I know that each time we have these sessions, we have people from all over the world. So as you're all beginning to come online, I just want to take a moment to let everyone get settled, to welcome you back. Welcome to our Somatic Experiencing Community Conversations for the month of May. My name is Ami Lee, and I'm the Director of Public Health Initiatives at the Somatic Experiencing International. We have just experienced a name change in the last month. It's a really exciting time at the Institute. We're coming up with all kinds of new initiatives, programs, and ways to be of service to the world in times of great turbulence and upset. And so I'm so glad you can be with us today for this series and today's topic specifically. And I hope that it will be a tremendous resource to you. So welcoming you back to the Institute and the series, I can tell you that this is a monthly gathering where we set up a space for community connection, to be a resource on the subject matter at hand, but also just a resource in being connected with other human beings who are interested and who care about the kind of topics that are of concern to you. It is designed to not just be an event where you have another set of talking heads telling you important information, get out your notebooks, this is a class. I hope you can experience today as a time of really being in the space with the guests who we've brought here with you, that it's conversant, that it's connective, and that you can also be in connection with everyone else who is here. We've had over 400 people sign up for this event, and many of you are coming online right now, and I know many will even watch the videos afterwards. They will be posted, just so I know it always comes up, on our YouTube channel where you can see past community conversations events, such as last month's topic on medical mental health, and the previous on the state of men's mental health. And then the month before that was on body therapeutic methods and their impact on mental health. And then we did one on disaster before that, and then a whole series on telehealth. So if you haven't joined us for any of these already, you can go to our Somatic Experiencing International YouTube channel and look at some of our past events and just enjoy all that we've been trying to create as a new public health resource from our institute. We are a charitable nonprofit organization that provides training in the neurobiological resource we all know and love as Somatic Experiencing, where we connect therapeutic practitioners, coaches, body workers, medical professionals with resources for deepening their counseling and therapeutic practices with somatic psychology methods of somatic experiencing. So that's what we do as our mainstay, but it's really imperative to us at this moment in history when the whole world is suffering this pandemic together. And, suffering is a big word. I know there's been a lot of different experiences of it, but I'll just say that for now. When we've all been in this together, we know more than ever our connection to each other and our sharing of our capacity and capability is more important than ever. And so we find ourselves at a new point in world history. I mean, can you even imagine 100 years from now? They'll be looking back and saying, what happened in the pandemic of 2020? Did 2020 win? 2021? That was not very funny. But one thing we do know with regards to today's topic is that substance abuse can really spike out of control when communities are experiencing catastrophic events. So for today's session, we've gathered some people who I think you're going to get a lot out of what they have to share from their experience and their professional service standpoints. But before we do that, I just want to orient you to what the structure of the setting will be so we can really begin to get in a conversation. The question and answer box at the bottom of your screen please take a look down there now, is the space that we'll be using to communicate between participants and the guests who are together in this conversation. And so I'd love for you, if you already have questions. In fact, there's something that made you sign up for today's session. There's questions you already have about substance abuse and recovery and the field of neuropsychology as it relates to it, that before you even know who's here, I bet you're wondering. If you already have a question, go ahead and put it into the Q&A. We will disable the chat so that the chat feature is not available. It looks like it's still on right now, but we'll be disabling that. So please don't communicate into the chat, but in that Q&A, if you could go ahead, oh, it says only the hosts and panelists can see questions. Uh-oh, we might have our settings a little funky. So if you could help me out right now, go into the Q&A and post a question you have about substance abuse and recovery, or neuroscience, or somatic experiencing, or even about who's here. If somebody, even Kiana, I know you're over there, she is with us from the Institute on the attendee side, could post a question. If you can see it and upvote it, I see that Kiana just put in a question, but it did say that the questions may only be visible for panelists a moment before that. So this is a little technical snafu we're having with you as we begin. If you can see Kiana's question, can you please thumbs it up? Which I'm not seeing any thumbs up happening, and I know there's enough of you here that my guess is that you cannot see Kiana's question. If you cannot see Kiana's question, can you type in there, I cannot see it? Can't see the questions, duh. Okay, someone just put, hello world, art thou real or was Descartes right? All right, we've got, yeah, I see a bunch of you are now posting, you cannot see it. So, all right, we'll be fussing behind the scenes to try and get that fixed. But I think once we launch the Zoom session, I don't know if we can change that feature, but normally we have it featured so that you guys can see each other's questions and upvote them as to if you like them. So now that means the pressure's on for us. I need you more than ever. So maybe we will leave the chat feature open. So Dion is our tech support on there. Dion, if you can make sure the chat feature is open. If you all can see chat, yes?
Real quick, I think we're good on the Q&A, so everybody should be able to see questions now.
Okay. Anybody want to try another one? I see Kiara, Elizabeth, Morgan, and David, and Nicole, and Anonymous. A bunch of you just wrote in there. Can a couple of you write in again? Kiana, can you do another test for us? Just so we really get started right. Okay, now I see Elizabeth just put one in with and I can see thumbs up. And now Kathleen tells me you can't. Okay, guys. Well, this is clearly us all connected together. Thank you for being a part. Thanks, Dion. Thanks for getting that sorted. And Kiana. Morgan says he still can't, but everyone's starting to say you can't see it. So I want to thumbs up all of those guys. Thank you. All right, sorted. So now that you can see, that is our wonderful Q&A. Let's go ahead and populate it with questions throughout today's session. We may or may not get to them all, but as we see your questions and people upvote them, then like you can see Kiana put, can you see these questions, and people are upvoting them. Oh, and already Deb's got some in there. Okay, cool. This is fun. You guys get it. You know the drill. All right, I'm not going to tell you anymore. So one more thing I want to have you do. Go ahead and post in there, if you would like, where you're chiming in from. I always love this part. And if you want to put a little bit about a subject area that you work in, or if you are a therapeutic professional or anything about your interest in being here, go ahead and post that too. At some point, we'll sort of move those out of the Q&A, but just so everybody else can start to see who's here. And someone who's anonymous, which I love on a substance abuse session. Someone's already starting off as an anonymous attendee. We very much support anonymity in this gathering too. All right, we've got Canada, Indianapolis. We've got San Antonio and Green Bay. We've got Texas and Idaho, SEP. Hi, Cecily. We've got Holly in Ohio. We've got California and San Diego. All right, Chile, you're my first international one on my list. I'm so happy to see you. Bienvenidos, Romania. Oh my gosh, really glad you can be with us, and good evening to you there, I know. All right, beautiful BC, Canada. All right. All the way from India here. Oh, it's students from India, even better. And, our hearts and prayers are certainly with everyone in India right now. I know we're with everyone around the world. And actually, let me just pause and let us have this moment. I get excited. I ramble so fast. Really be with all these people are together right now. And so you guys creating the questions, create this conversation, create the dynamic with all of us here. Let yourself be nourished for a minute, knowing we're all here. Spring, a lot of places in the world, fall in some others. Things are starting to change and shift. Can we feel into that with everybody together? Know that there's been all these griefs and these pressures and this stir crazy pent upness and so many different sensations in our bodies over the past year while we try to make sense of the senselessness of this global pandemic. And here, just being sensed together. Whew, that just helped me because I can really sense into the space you're all with us. But enough about me. We've got some really amazing guests, you guys. You're going to love them. So if I can ask the guests, go ahead and bring your cameras online. We've got Greg and Lindy and Robina and Robert with us today. You're going to be in such a treat. Hi, guys. Okay, cool. So welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for being the visible representatives of this community. Everybody who is on our session today is a somatic experiencing practitioner, which sometimes we have students. Actually, maybe one of you is a student, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I was going to say, right, Robina, didn't mean to put the pressure on. So, but we're all in a process of learning our own neurobiological interventions for resolving trauma and may have others in addition to SE and just things to share with the world about how it impacts the nature of your work. In order for the people who are with us today to get to know you each, I'm enjoying looking at your faces. I'm going to pitch out the first question. It's not a softball, it's a hardball. It's a hard one right off the bat. But in the answer to the question, if you could tell us a little bit about where you work, what you do, the nature of your work, as well as your response to this question, that would really help us get started. Everybody game?
Yeah, sure.
I might interrupt a little bit throughout the time with some questions. I apologize in advance if it's weird that I pop on the screen, but I will pop on as a representative of the people in the Q&A to see if we might bring them over to ask a question or on screen for an exercise. So you guys keep me posted so we can best support this. My question for you to start is, how is your experience of using neurobiological resources, SE or others, influencing your work in the field of substance abuse and recovery? So, I mean, what's the impact of working with nervous systems for those people who are not familiar with SE? Wait, I'm so sorry. In your participants list, I'm awful. In the participants list, I want to know how many people have never, what, Lindy?
You're hilarious, Ami.
Cool. I want you to know, and I want to know how many people who are here today have not taken any SE classes and don't know what SE is. Just so when you guys are answering and responding, we can I don't want anyone to feel excluded. So participants, raise your little blue hands if you haven't taken any SE training, if maybe you don't know what SE is, if you're like, wait, what is SE? I came for substance abuse. We're not here to sell you SE. I just want to make sure we're just having a conversation everyone can follow. Okay, so we've got, seen it going 19, 20. So at least 20 people who are with us right now are not trained in SE. So let's not have just our own little exclusive conversation that leaves any of them out. But let's just keep expanding the access for the world to learn about how these resources are helping your work. All right. So how is using neurobiological resources influencing your work in substance abuse and recovery?
So hi, everybody. I'm Lindy. And so I'm coming to you today from Nanaimo, British Columbia, in Canada. I live on Vancouver Island, beautiful place to be. So I've been working as, I call myself an addictions and a trauma counselor for about more than 25 years. So I've worked a lot with substance abuse. I also work with process addictions like gambling, and shopping and technology. And I work with a lot of people who've experienced bad things. They're in the criminal justice system. I work with a lot of First Nations around where I work. who've experienced a lot of difficulties. Yeah, and so I studied somatic experiencing because I was working as an addictions counselor, and I just was like totally overwhelmed working at the drug and alcohol clinic with what people were coming in with. And so I went for breakfast with my friend Dee, and she was talking about doing this somatic experiencing training, and I just signed up. And so it's helped me so much. And I would say a couple of highlights of that would be it really taught me about working with the nervous system. And so, because we know in SE, there's a kind of like a category in SE called global high intensity activation. And most people who have an addiction are in that. And it's a really difficult place to be. And so they use as an adaptive strategy. And so it's just like SE has really helped me to kind of like learn how to read clients' nervous systems, how to educate them on that, and how to very slowly invite them to slow down, which is a pretty big challenge when you're talking about people in addiction, because they usually don't like to slow down. There's just so much happening, and that's how they've been coping, is just by going really fast. But those are some of the strategies that have really helped me. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Great. I think I'm next. So when we talk about neurobiology in addiction and how it informs what we do, my name's Greg, and I live in Prescott, Arizona, here in the United States. I have an addiction treatment center with 118 beds. So pretty good size addiction treatment center, and it works with Medicaid clients. And in the United States, Medicaid is the public healthcare system. So sort of de facto, the folks that I'm working with are coming out of a setting of poverty as a general rule. So, and a lot of times it's the systemic sort of long-term type of situation that way. And the amount of trauma that we see is really immense. I've worked in addiction for most of my career, but this particular population, in addition to addiction, we're always looking at mental health diagnoses as well, and a lot of just really large scale, oftentimes, again, systemic trauma. So for me, the neurobiological element just opened up a new window to helping these folks move in the right direction. And it has as well with the staff that work with us here. A lot of the clients that I'm working with have been in treatment 7, 8, 10, 15, 25. I had a guy the other day, this is his 30th treatment center. He's 50 years old, and he's been coming in and out of treatment for his entire life. And so as a clinician, a lot of times you think, well, geez, what am I going to say that hasn't already been said? And there's a lot of truth to that, right? I mean, how many times can we go over relapse prevention material? Relapse prevention is great. How many times are we going to have that discussion? And the thing that a neurobiological approach helps with is, one, it informs every element of the counseling that I do, in every element of the counseling approach that we take, in that we're always looking at how activated is the nervous system in front of me, and what might it take to settle that nervous system so that it can actually retain some of what we're talking about. Just on a that's the very first sort of basic level. People don't remember stuff when their nervous system's activated, right? You can tell me, and I'm sure we've all had that experience, right? I get into an argument and the next day I can't remember anything I said. If I'm highly activated, which a lot of the folks who are in addiction are a lot of the time, as we mentioned earlier, they're all global high activation. Not all, but a lot of them have a global high activation, which means the fight flight system is on full steam and the freeze system is on top of it. And a lot of times they're just consistently compensating by using drugs or alcohol. And then they get to us and they stop and everything hurts. It's really uncomfortable. So for me, what happens when I have a neurobiological approach, I can learn to settle that system in front of me before I try to do some sort of cognitive intervention. And that is so helpful to understand just the principle, the idea that if I can settle this person on a bottom up level, for example, I'm actually doing it myself right now. I'm a little nervous about being on this thing and having 100 people watch me talk. Oh boy. And so I'm orienting, right? I'm taking in my environment and I'm watching my breath as I speak. And so I'm settling myself even as we go through this process. And that's some of the stuff that we teach clients to do. So that's what comes up for me in answer to the question.
Right. Hi. Yes, my name's Robina, and I'll say kia ora. I live and work in New Zealand, so it's early morning here at the moment. I'm a medical officer or medical practitioner who works in the public health specialist addiction service. So I work with clients who manifest all sorts of substance addiction use, and I became very interested in looking at other options apart from medication-assisted treatment for those affected with addictions and also coexisting mental health issues. For me, you know, the neurobiological component sort of provides a way of understanding the issues that are faced by our clients, and also provides a way of explaining perhaps why we end up in the situation where we are with addictions or other ways of coping. And I agree that addiction is really a way of adapting to certain life situations based on a history of significant trauma, which dysregulates the nervous system in such a way that they rely on something outside themselves to actually feel okay and to get on with life in some way. And why I was attracted to somatic experiencing is that it sort of provided a way of understanding some of these neurobiological systems, and also at the same time providing solutions in which that actually show that the body itself has an innate intelligence which can be guided towards self-regulation once again. And for me, this is a huge addiction to a sort of a therapeutic toolbox, because it means that people can learn to self-regulate and to become more empowered in terms of managing, you know, their addiction issues once they get to the point where they want to make these changes in their lives. And it means they become less reliant on medication, which I think has its place, but used alone, we know because of the high relapse rate that medication alone is not the answer, and the medical model alone does not provide a real solution for those affected by significant substance addiction issues. So for me, learning the skills that can facilitate clients to develop these skills themselves and to really become aware of where their nervous system is so important. And it's a major addition to the recovery tools. Sorry, I'm very nervous, so I'm sort of mumbling my words a bit. But to me, somatic experiencing, in a nutshell, it enhances awareness of your body's innate capacities to heal.
Yes, it's my turn. I'm with you. I'm a little nervous too. It's funny because I do groups pretty well every day, but this time I'm on the hot seat, that kind of thing. So I'm Robert, and I am 31 years clean and sober. I was introduced to somatic experiencing about 5 years ago, and it was life-changing for me. Even though I had that clean time, I still suffer from extreme anxiety and depression. I stopped using my medication just before, in January, just before COVID started. I thought I would try going off the meds because I haven't had to go back on them, which is great because all that stress and all the anxiety and all the things that happened, I've had not to go back on my meds. And I was on my meds for about 15, 20 years. And it's like, so it's part of my story that SE worked for me, right? So I'm a good endorser because, you know, I tried all kinds of therapy, a lot of exposure therapy, all those kind of things. But they're, you know, and the thing is, you know, when you try all the things and it doesn't work, what happens? You blame yourself, right? You're not doing enough. You're doing something wrong, or there's something wrong with you, you know, that's, you know, that's you're broken in some way, right? And I find with Etsy, it's such a loving, gentle thing and natural thing. First Nations, I'm Blackfoot, Assiniborne, Chinese, and French Canadian. I live in Vancouver, BC, and I work in the Downtown Eastside. And if you people don't know what the Downtown Eastside is, it is in Canada. It's one of the highest poverty areas in Canada, and it's also highest drug addiction um, place in Canada. You know, I work with primarily with First Nations people. I work with a lot of people coming out of incarceration or going or trying to stay out of jail, people who have lost their children. You know, so I interface a lot with people that have so many reasons not to use that still find themselves using, right? And it's like, you know, I love, I don't know if you know Debra Trueax, but I really, I was lucky when I came to work at Native Course and Counseling, they gave me free reign to create a program. And I had already done a lot of my SE stuff. So I was able to base a program based on trauma and addiction, right? And making the links with substance abuse and behaviors and using the polyvagal thing, you know, and I run groups every Wednesday where it repeat itself every week, because one thing we know with people with, you know, who are hyper, this doesn't work very well, the connection to the frontal cortex. You can teach it over and over again, but as soon as something happens and they get hyper aroused, they can't think. And then, you know, one of the things that Mate says is that, you know, in the court system, they see it as a choice, right? Which is not really, really, people wouldn't choose to ruin their lives. You know, there's so many bad consequences to using for these people. And, you know, it keeps them in poverty. And then, you know, which makes my work even harder, because right now we're using the internet, but a lot of people can't afford it. You know, a lot of people can't afford bus tickets to come to our program. You know, that's lots of barriers when there's poverty. So I work a lot with poverty, but I do know my clients love, because when I try to explain to them, when I do explain to them and they get the polyvagal thing, it takes away the blame.
Mm.
It's something that happened to me, and I need to heal. So I love the thing that most of all is the education part. And yes, the practical actually doing the work is wonderful, because it changed my life and it's changing my clients of my life, my clients that I work with, because it's so different than exposure therapy. That's all.
I really like what you said, Robert, about how that information oftentimes really decreases the sense of self-blame and self-hate. And that's probably my favorite part of watching you know, the neurobiological element of things come into play, is when the lights go on and somebody can finally put meaning to stuff that previously either didn't have any meaning, or it was just because I'm a bad person, more or less, whether it's consciously that thought, or just the understanding. To be rid of shame a little bit as a result of the neurobiological information is really helpful.
Yeah, I love Gabor Mate's work. I think he's been a great inspiration as a sort of a medical colleague for really understanding and helping people address the addiction issues. And I agree, the shame issue is huge, and just being able to explain to those affected in a way that, yeah, there are good reasons why you are the way you are, and it's, you know, it's been your way of surviving, and but there is a way through this. There is a way in which you can sort of get through this, and it's not just about the drugs. There's something else going on, you know. So it's not just that you're using the drugs that you're in this situation. There's a whole number of factors, and your nervous system has been trying its best to sort of just get you through whatever you need to get through, and using, you know, SE practices can really help you find a way in which you can tune into your body again, because, you know, the substance, you know, trauma disconnects you from the body, and then substance use sort of amplifies that disconnection even more so. So yeah, I think it's great that people can find a way to really come to terms with that and think, oh wow, you know, there is a way through this. And like you say, I'm not going to be, I don't have to be like this forever. It's not just genetic, and yeah, I'm okay, and I can get the support and reach out when I need it.
Yeah, one thing I'd add to that too is it's so So we talk about the idea that the data decreases the shame, and it's nice to say something like, hey, by the way, this material that has been happening to you consistently, for example, you have an outside experience that triggers an inside, what we call triggers in the field, right? We talked for years and years about this or that's a trigger. But what does that mean? Well, what it really means is your limbic system is kicking on and moving you in a particular habitually followed direction designed to downregulate your nervous system. And so with SE, we can A, explain that, which is helpful in terms of diminishing shame, but then B, we can offer a solution to it. Hey, here's how it works, and here's how to avoid, for example, moving into overwhelm. The idea of training a nervous system to no longer move into overwhelm and to not necessarily immediately need to go to system to downregulation through an outside intervention. It's just really, really helpful.
Well, one of the things I want to say too is like with my population I work with, a lot of it's intergenerational trauma.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, it goes all the way back to smallpox. I mean, 95% of our population was killed in the Americas from smallpox. And you can imagine, that trauma that those ancestors experienced and being displaced from their homes because they had to go move and try to get together again in other villages and stuff like that because they've lost their home, everybody's gone. So it's like, that was very traumatic. And it's something that, the people at the time that were there are saying, this is bad, this is happening to you because you were bad people, right? And it's like, there was just generations for us of being told and shamed and, collapsing, our culture and was attacked, our identities were attacked, and on top of that, having the events of having to get a move and watching your family disappear within days, probably with smallpox, right? And being told that you're the cause of that, right? And I'm wrapping that for people and helping them unwrap it, because it's like that would overwhelm anybody's system, especially when these people came along, when the settlers came along and they came from an authoritative place, right? In their minds, right? And it's like, so, when I'm trying to unravel that with people and sort that out for them, there's a lot of work. It's not just the addiction. There's a lot of identity work that goes along with that with First Nations people. We have.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that, Robert. What kind of material do you have them? What do you use for that? That's such an interesting. You hear a lot of that in the SE community right now. How do we use this work to work with, sort of cultural oppression and stuff like that? And it sounds like that's what you're actually doing. So that's pretty neat. Can you speak more to how that works systemically?
Well, like we work with the medicine wheel as an approach. I don't know if you know the medicine wheel, but medicine wheel, the wheel is used for many different teachings. It is a teaching platform, right? And it is a way of us understanding our connection to everything. And we're, when you're working with a population with substance abuse, there's a total disconnection from everything, right? You're on survival mode all the time, right? Like I said, we're talking about intergenerational children who are born into families where there's a lot of trauma and the parents already have their own PTSD, right? And that they're dealing with that and they're holding the baby. They don't self-regulation is something in the population I work with, some of the people for the first time when they start getting the somatic and getting to a place where they've got off the drugs and they can really take benefits of using somatic experiencing, they say, I've never had this in my life. It's not like I lost something. I've never had it. It's a lot different,
And you're talking about is like a sense of connection, or what do you mean, like the attachment wounding?
Being calm.
Wow.
Being calm, being self-regulating. It's not like you've had a car accident and something's happened to you or you got attacked. It's like from the moment you were held as a baby, they didn't have that ability. The parents are supposed to teach you self-regulation. Baby cries, mother comes and calms you down with their voice and all that. Baby doesn't get that. Baby gets a mother that's stressed out because of poverty or because they're in domestic violence, or they got PTSD themselves and they're depressed and they're full of anxiety because they don't know how to be a parent because they were taken away from their parents.
Right. So what we know is that co-regulation comes before self-regulation, right? And so what you're talking about, Robert, is just, like it really touches me deeply. And sometimes when people come in to see me, they have never had the ability to, never had anyone co-regulate with them. So they didn't learn how to self-regulate. So this is where substances and behaviors can really help to kind of soothe the nervous system. And so sometimes we're like that parent where we're able to, we create the conditions where people can actually co-regulate with us. And that is a really beautiful experience. I feel so blessed that I've had so many times in my career where that has happened. And then teaching people that it's okay that you can't self-regulate because nobody taught you how to do it. And so we're going to do this together, and let's continue to do that. So come to my groups and, kind of like find other people that you can do that with is such a beautiful thing for people. It gives them some hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the co-regulation thing. I wish I'd said that for my first answer. It was about 3 minutes shorter than what I said. So I like that a lot. Ami, what do you got? I see you popping in here.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I want to jump in here because, well, two things. This conversation is already very robust. The things you have shared have already really been regulating as for all of us. But there's two things I want to tell you guys. The Q&A has exploded with questions, and that doesn't always happen on these. Sometimes I have to really beg people for questions, but this particular audience really has a lot of questions for you. So I do want to note that Debra asked a good one that got voted up real high, and I'm going to ask her in a minute if we can maybe even bring her online so she could, her face could pop on like I just did and join you and actually ask you yourselves. I think you guys said you'd be okay with that. But also, before we do that, because you did start to say all the wonderful pieces you just did about first world nations and poverty, and the pieces you were bringing in were so social justice oriented, I want to highlight another question that was a little further down the list, but it was by an anonymous attendee, and just ask you if you could maybe kind of piece some of your response in around this, because it seems like you're going there now. And the question is, how do educators and clinicians use an embodied social justice approach? And maybe that's where you were just going, Lindy, with the co-regulation, but an embodied social justice approach informed by SE and PNI to support the health of student-client nervous systems in a way that mitigates the potential harms exacerbating substance abuse pathology. So I think the question is in general about embodied social justice as it relates to substance abuse recovery. If you could speak to that, and then let me know in a moment. I'd love to bring Debra on to ask the question if she's up for it. And Debra, if you could type into that chat that you'd like to come on in response to Kiana's question, we'll just port you right over when the guests are ready. Thanks, guys.
Well, I guess I'll start, and I'll say that for me, I'm impacted by what I hear. I was impacted by what Robert was talking about, right? And so that affects me. And so that's the way that I model and work with people. And so it actually helps me to, like I often say to people, I'll put my hand on my heart sometimes, that's kind of a big thing for me. And I'll just say, can I just have a moment? Because what you shared is really big deal. And so I allow myself to be impacted by what people are sharing. And so for me, that's the embodied approach. And sometimes I grieve and sometimes I cry. And I don't let things just pass me by. I encourage people, and I look at the capacity of the person who's with me. Sometimes people have little capacity. It happened to me the other day. Somebody said, 4 bad things happened, bang, bang, bang. And I'm like, whoa, can I just take a moment? That's a lot. And he was quite disconnected. So we didn't take a huge moment. We just took a little moment because he had a small capacity to be able to connect with that and to be embodied with all of those bad things. So that's how I want to respond to that. I'm curious what other people have to say.
Well, I think the social justice question is a really interesting one. I've seen it come up in a lot of somatic experiencing sessions where I've assisted. And what's interesting to me is when I look at social justice, I look at an emphasis on the overall overarching culture and some modifications to that culture that, if they were made, would be, would advance justice and would allow for more equality in the world. And to me, I address that, I embody that by simply showing up and doing trauma work with individuals. To me, somatic experiencing is very much an individual, like one-to-one experience. And once in a while, I can hold some of what I've learned and modulate and work with the nervous system of a group. But that's part of why I was so interested to hear what Robert had to say, because I've yet to find a true application of somatic experiencing. And I think there are a lot of folks who really want this system, this SE thing, to work in a social justice way. And I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a practical element of that, other than, you know, I can abstract things. I can say, well, you know, this thing I'm doing is somehow contributing to social justice, but I've not seen anything that's really concrete or helpful in that way. So really curious to hear other people's answers and see if I can apply some of that material.
Well, for me, in terms of looking at social justice, I mean, obviously, the question of resilience is very much related to those very early formative years and having a secure attachment pattern established right from the start. So for me, in terms of enhancing social justice in a truly embodied way that is enduring and that will help prevent the promulgation of intergenerational trauma, it's really important to highlight and protect the importance of those first formative years and of really looking after both the prenatal and perinatal and postnatal periods. In other words, enhancing the societal support to enhance the development of healthy, secure attachments in that context. And that can provide a degree of resilience for for the children and for future generations, and heal generations to come, but also apparently can heal generations that have gone before. And using an embodied approach that makes it a really real process that highlights the importance of that primary relationship. And we know that because of the neuroplasticity of our nervous system, it's never too late to, even if it's never too late to allow that process to be developed.
You know, a lot of my clients, I always say, they explain to them, like for me, my experience was that, I could be happy. I could be the life of the party in the room, but I'll mask. It's my way of controlling the room, because if they're laughing with me and they're laughing at me, right? And then, they talk about the word joy, and I see that on the chart, and I'm going, I never felt joy. I could get happy and laugh, and and sometimes I use drugs and alcohol to get me happy, right? But joy for me is, it's self-sustaining. Like, things are going good in my life, right? And I can walk out of the room for the party and not drop off a cliff like I usually would do. The face comes off and I'm walking home, and all of a sudden I'm getting sad, right? Even though things are going good in my life, right? It's just more people need to understand that's where the slum of our clients are coming from. And a lot of judgment, social justice. You talk about social justice, like, society has an expectation of what a human being is supposed to be like and look like, right? They don't take into account of their history, right? Everybody's supposed to be like this, and then everybody's going to be happy, right? Well, the truth is, a lot of us have different experiences, and we have come from intergenerational happenings. So I'm not saying we have a monopoly intergenerational trauma, but we have more than our fair share of harmful experiences, as First Nations people, and that people need to understand that we have some of our only healing practice, but the other people leaving, and when his talks, he actually mentions the fact that he learned a lot of us about the fact that a lot of our practices talk about, being still, being out in the woods, touching the tree, that there's a resonance with nature, and not just with human beings, but also with nature, that we can pick up on. We can, we go up in the mountain, and we all believe that we can, that you have to go to one person to have to speak to the creator. You can just go up on the mountain for 4 days and do our vision quest. That we have that part of us is good, and that we get disconnected from. And when we do the medicine teachings, we have like the spiritual, the emotional, the physical, and the mental, and all those parts of ourselves need to be looked after. When trauma hits, all just injury to each one of those parts of ourselves, and they all have to be addressed, right? And it's part of my practice is to try to introduce concepts. And we, like First Nations people don't have a religion; we have a belief system, and belief systems actually vary from West Coast to East Coast. So I'm not going to try to blanket it. We want to verify that right now. There's a lot of different beliefs, and the medicine we teach is something that a lot of West Coast people have adapted, not all, but some people have adapted that model, but it's actually a prairies and back east tradition. But it's a way of looking at ourselves and a view of the world. And it's a map for a lot of my clients to reconnect as they start to get healthy, and they can take that in and they have room for it. And they develop parts of the brain that can actually utilize that. Because when you're in fight or flight, all you're concerned about is survival and staying away from threat and avoidance. And alcohol and drug and alcohol is an avoidance method, right? To avoid how I'm feeling, because I've got all this stuff here packaged up and I don't know how to take it apart. And exposure theory tries to get you to a lot of the times, right? And they're like, with us, it's triation, little bits at a time. That's enough work today. That's enough work today. No, don't go too far. New story, right? This is enough, right? I'm not constantly having to slow down my clients because they're used to going boom and then numbing out, right? So, but we, as Etsy people, we all know triation is much better. And they let your nervous system stimulate that, adjust to that, enjoy that, and you see the benefits, right? So, yeah.
Robert, you need to know this, that I'm not putting my hand on my heart to show I'm impacted. I am impacted, and I'm trying to, I don't want to cry on these things, but I'm really moved by what's happening in the chat, and I really would like you guys to hear. This is an incredible conversation to be a part of. By the way, really, really profound what you guys are sharing, and no joke. So the question was asked by Anonymous. I don't know if this is the same Anonymous, but they say, thank you, Robert, as a First Nations woman in Canada. I have been so scared of the pandemic because of the blood memory of previous pandemics and the experiences done to us medically and the experiments done on us medically. So you're like, just having this conversation and you guys being so embodied and so vulnerable and present in it is already like, literally, this is not a learning, we're just really getting to be with each other. And then other people are saying to all of you guys, just really resonating with that, saying, I find my SE therapist being able to hold my trauma around race and being able to integrate it has been incredibly meaningful, says Sahar. And Trish says, thank you for being so personal and vulnerable in your sharing and for locating yourself. This makes such a difference in the work we do, personalizing our experience of SE while integrating it into our clinical work. So I just could give you that shout out at the end, but your embodiment right now is deeply moving. And I'd love to bring, it's a different topic question, but Debra's is good and people really, did you want to say something, Robert? I can see. I don't mean to just monologue at you. Oh yes, I do. That's all I love to do. But we can bring Deb on right now. She has another question in a different area of stuff, but everybody was really interested in hers also. And as she's coming on, I just want to tell people this is free programming. You've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. If you could go to traumahealing.org, hey, wow, our new beautiful upgraded website, take a look at it. It's freaking beautiful. Thank you to all of the people on the team who did it. traumahealing.org/donate. And you said, hey, I want to donate $5 a month or $2 today or $20 today or $100 today to further this work in the world. When it brings you up to buckets, you can put it into the COVID-19 response fund, but also you could send me a note if there's something specific you'd like it to go for, but it lets us know that this programming has been helpful for you. And I can assure you it will go towards scholarships and more people to get access to this kind of resource. So please do donate today if you can. It lets our board of directors and our executive director know that you'd like us to continue to do free programming like this. And that's my commercial. Thanks for being a part of it. Debra, sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, Ami. Thank you so much for letting me participate, and thank you for this very powerful panel and this share. It's wonderful. And I'm actually, I'm an emergency department recovery coach. I'm actually on shift right now, so I turned my ring because I should get a call. But my question was regarding how somatic experiencing might be used in more of a crisis setting like an emergency department. And I mean, we also, besides my visits to the ED, where I meet with people who are in various stages of withdrawal, I also give telephone recovery support. So for maybe months on end after we meet somebody, to, you know, until they get a little bit more stable and set in their own pathway. But many of them are also experiencing crises through, you know, their first early, the first part of their recovery. And, you know, I just want to share, like last night I went to coach a gentleman who was quite sick. He said he was there wanting an alcohol detox and for benzos. And he felt really sick, and we were able to find him a detox bed overnight, and he refused it in the morning. And I tried to talk with him in the hospital, but I can only imagine that he was so overwhelmed with cravings to use that he couldn't make the choice to keep that bed. And just one other scenario, I met a woman today who came in to volunteer at one of our centers, which is a beautiful thing. And she was so overwhelmed because she's in a domestic situation with an abusive boyfriend, and it was hard for her to think straight. And I mean, I would like to know how, because I can make it up, I can hold her hand, I can try to simplify, you know, the one day at a time, let's write some simple things down. But, you know, what can I do as far as, you know, meaningful ways to help a person slow down with some of the techniques. So I would really like to be able to put some of this into play to help some folks.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, you know, if you're talking about somebody who's in active withdrawal, the somatic experiencing piece is to modulate the nervous system, and the nervous system modulates, you know, we talk about the idea of moving into social engagement. And so simple social engagement is one of the easiest ways to pull a person into their cerebral cortex out of the limbic system stuff. And the limbic system in withdrawal is just screaming. I always tell folks it's similar to if you were dying of thirst. You know, if any of us were dying of thirst or starving to death, this conversation panel would look a lot different. We'd probably have some different experiences, right? So one of the first things that I'll do is engage socially, and I'll engage in a way that creates connection with me and the client, which is probably something you typically do already. But then I'll also spend a lot of time focusing on other areas in which they engage socially. So I'll find out what their hobbies are, who their friends are, who their family is, and move in that direction. The other thing that I find really helpful is, depending on your context, drawing their attention to their physical experience. Hey, that's a nice shirt. Where'd you get it? How's it feel? Is it a soft shirt? How interesting. So that's called orienting. I'm moving a person to the experience of anything that's happening basically on the other side of their skin, right? So and I use that. I use the shoes thing and the shirt thing pretty much every time. And at practice, it's my go-to to begin with. Hey, where'd you get those shoes? They look nice. Are they comfortable? Oh, what are they made out of? How do they feel with your socks? And that's pretty down regulating. I actually could talk about this for like a half hour, but I don't think that would be very polite. So I'm sure everybody else has a lot of enthusiastic answers, so I'll defer to them. But thank you so much. It's such a good question.
One of the things that jumps up for me is I'm just thinking about, I love what you're saying, and social engagement is such a great way to kind of down regulate, to help people feel maybe not safe, but safe enough. And so that is one of the challenges for people with addiction. Maybe they've never felt safe, but so that's too much of a leap. So we'll just say safe enough for now, right? And that language can be really helpful for people. But another piece, and I think Peter Levine talks about this, is the idea that people often will wear jewelry or things that have meaning to them. And so kind of like similar to what you were talking about, Greg, like if someone has a necklace, oh, that's so beautiful. Where'd you get that cross? Or, oh, where did you get that? What's that stone? Or maybe earrings or their glasses or like those kind of things to in a similar vein, right? But those resources that people, or people will have a necklace with their name on it. That kind of thing can be really kind of helpful to just keep the conversation going. Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that I often find useful in that situation is using the VU sound, or even a variation of that. You know, I mean, sometimes if you just ask people to breathe, they sort of give you this look, oh, really? But I've found that combining that breathing with the VU sound, where you just take a breath in, and as you breathe out, you just make the sound VU.
Oh my gosh, should we bring people on for that right now? Of course we should. Sorry, Robina, but it was like you just queued it up and I couldn't help.
Oh, I know.
Not to
Yeah.
stop your answer, but why don't you go ahead and keep
Yeah.
sharing what you're going to share. But if you're a participant and you'd want to come on screen and do a little exercise with us, maybe this group would lead us through an exercise so you could get it for yourself, exactly what it is she's talking about. And whoever wants to, if the four of you want to help us lead it, that would be great. All of your perspectives on it. We've heard Peter's, we'd love to hear yours. So raise your little blue hands if you'd like to come on screen. We'll be clicking you over, and Robina, please go ahead and continue your response.
Okay, so I'll just, the idea of the VU sound is it brings online your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest, and just helps you calm down. So, and I think the actual vibration helps calm down. It gives a way of connecting people to sensing what's happening in their body, even though their mind's going crazy. So it's very simple. All you do is you just take a deep breath in, and then as you breathe out, you just make the VU sound. You can put your hands on your belly if you want to give it a bit of extra support, but just take a breath in, and as you breathe out.
Let's get everybody online and then go ahead and just start it at a moment. Like, stand by just a second as they come on with us. A lot of people raise their hands. Sorry, it's exciting. If everybody could start your video who came over as panelists, that would help us.
Okay, take a big breath in, and as you breathe out, just make the sound. Until you run out of. And if you repeat that a few times, even though it might seem a bit strange, it does seem to calm you down. And if people look at you and think, well, what's this VU sound? It sounds a bit weird to me. You can use a variation where you might introduce an animal sound or something that makes more sense to them, depending on how they're feeling. Like you could make it a growl or even a hiss, or whatever, or it could just be a and I think that notion of vocalization in some shape or form, which might be a reflection of how they're feeling, helps divert them from the craving, and also brings online their parasympathetic nervous system, which just helps them calm down a bit. I mean, it's not going to stop the withdrawal process or make them feel that, I'm okay, but it just helps. It can be really helpful in that sort of situation. And because it's simple, and I think the sound vibration is something that they can really sort of feel and tune into, even if they're generally a bit disconnected, or if they don't want to connect to what's going on in their body.
Thanks, Robina. Robert, Lindy, Greg, while we have these folks on, as our senior SE practitioners, I mean, they've all said they're up for an exercise. You want to do some more than VU? I mean, you guys, Stephanie, Carrie, James, hi, nice to see you. Hey, Alex, Hannah, hi, Nikki. And want to lead us in a little something else that you might use with someone if maybe you're working on exactly Debra's question, maybe someone's extremely activated, dealing with withdrawal syndromes. Is there some exercise that's a sort of brief adaptive access? Thanks.
Well, I'm curious about what that was like for people to do the VU. Wonder if anyone's brave enough.
I got like a little bit of a heady sort of calming, like I could kind of feel like a little wave kind of come over me of relaxation.
Thanks,
Great.
Anna. Carrie, what about for you?
As I was VUing, I became very aware of how crossed and tight I was. So it immediately caused me to uncross my legs and go flat onto the floor. So it was a reminder, you're clenched. And it was just like I wanted to open up with the sound.
Great.
Beautiful.
I could
Nikki.
feel the vibrational of the sound in my chest. And as I felt the vibration, that immediately brought me back into my body. And so, you know, that was really, really astounding to have that happen, because it immediately brought me back in versus an external focus, an external awareness. It brought me much more to an internal awareness.
Great.
Which actually, it's actually a really good point, Nikki, and something to consider for those of us who are going to experiment with the VU sound later. There are occasionally some clients for whom to bring them into the body is a little dysregulating.
Absolutely.
So that's the one proviso I guess I would add to the VU exercise. The VU exercise can be very useful, but there are, you know, it's something to be used judiciously.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming online. No, any more exercise, or we want to go back? We have a bunch more questions and we only have a little bit of time left, honestly. So thank you all for coming over. Dion and I will help you get back to the attendee side. It's lovely to see your faces and you're representing the other hundreds of people who are here. Thank you for coming on and being brave and letting us be with you. And then I'd love to bring up the next question, if it's okay, just in the interest of flow, and say, you know, we have Lorraine has an interesting question that's upvoted the most right now. All right, we're going to bring Lorraine on now so she can ask her next question, which I think you guys will probably enjoy as well.
Excuse my pajamas. It's late for it.
Your Zoom suit.
No dress code here.
I have a question around what is actually happening at a neurological level. It's a personal question because I lived with somebody who was a recovering addict for many, many, many years. Were clean and sober for 30 years. And yet there was a kind of an obsessive, what one might call dry drunk behavior that persisted. So I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Go ahead, Robert.
No. It's just, I mean, it's really hard to make that kind of assessment, you know, because everybody, it's more about this for me about the story, and it's like, you know, everybody's different, and it's like, you know, I being in the 12-step programs, you know, I met a lot of drunks in my time, and they get sober and they think the work is done. But you know, again, there are, like, I have not met anybody yet in my field, what as a counselor or in somebody even in a 12-step programs that hasn't had trauma. So getting off the drug, stop using the substances as an avoidance thing is one thing, but a lot of people pick up other things to start the cycle of avoidance all over again. So making people aware that, you know, there's real work of reconnecting yourself to your body, because a lot of us come talking heads, right? It's all up here, right or wrong, black or white. And that's a lot of dry drunkenness. It's dualistic thinking. But
Yeah.
you know, and then, you know, you bring something into the gray, and then you bring them in the world of color. In my point of view, it's not just black or white. There's a gray, and then there's a color. People got something comes on, a light comes on. They learn about their connection to the world. They reconnect. They see the benefits of how joy can come into your life. You know, when they haven't had much joy, life is just, you get along, you go to the next thing. It's drudgery, and stuff like that. But you know, to be able to sit still and really take in like what we do with orientation, make people aware. Wow, you know, my head's been automatic. I've been thinking automatic. to slow down and become mindful about, what's happening around me. And then, when I'm calm enough, what's going on inside me, because a lot of people, this is scary. This is absolutely petrifying. One of, like one of the things I was going to say, what I do is one of the things I love, the 3 questions, what happened in the last 24, I gave you pleasure. What happened in 4 days, I gave you pleasure. What happened in the last week, and I say, dip into it. Don't have to stay there, because for even when it's a really good, happy time that they've had, it's too much for them to try to think about how my body react to that. So a lot of people when I work with them, I say dip into it as long as you can, but no longer than that. Don't force yourself. Just be easy. Just recognize that when you're happy, what happens to you sensation wise, and it's just like, we start off very, 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 very small, but with a dry drunk, it's very much so. They're not, you see, sometimes you think they're very emotional because they get angry, but that's just a symptom, right, of things being stacked up. I deal with a lot of people who've done horrendous things, and they find out that trauma is related to their anger. Whoa. And that the things that they've done to people, it has to do with the fact that they've had trauma, right? And they can start dealing with and start having choices, because trauma is not going to rule the rest of their life. It's not a life sentence, as Peter Levine says. And that you're going to have a day that you're going to be able to be self-regulating and whatnot. And, a lot of people who are in the prison system feel that they're broken and they're not repairable, And so, when we learn that, Peter, I love what Peter says, we try to get out of here and expand and use the whole container, right? And then when we work with a counselor to understand, what is this container? And that's what part of our job is, to educate people. What is this container? How do I use it and whatnot? Because, for a lot of us, it's, this has been the safe place to just rule yourself through your head.
Yeah, just about I think there's a lot being studied now about the neurobiology of attachment and how it operates at a sort of molecular neuroendocrine, and that manifests in a behavioral level in terms of a dysregulation of basics, like the dopamine, the oxytocin, and the stress response all get dysregulated through a sort of an insecure attachment, and that sets you up to have an increased susceptibility to addiction. Through neuroadaptive intracellular processes, through neuroendocrine processes that then manifest in certain types of behavior. So and that substance use is then seen as a way of managing these sort of underlying sort of situations. The good news is that you can repair that by focusing on sort of attachment repair processes through embodied therapy approaches. But it's a way of understanding why the dry drunk may still be susceptible to relapse, and that and again, I'd say it's not, so substance addiction is not just about the drugs.
So one thing I wanted to add to that too, I see alcoholism often as sort of almost a religious process, right? So an alcoholic is passionate about alcohol and will put, I always say the difference between a problem drinker and an alcoholic is a problem drinker has a problem and an alcoholic has the solution. And alcohol is their solution until it's not anymore. And so the challenge you have is they develop, I think, what Robina is talking about, they develop an attachment relationship with alcohol. Because alcohol is incredibly consistent and dependent. It does exactly what it says it's going to do every single time for years until it doesn't anymore. And that's a lot of the times, or until the consequences of this dependency or this attachment relationship with alcohol eclipse the value of it. And then the challenge, of course, is I'm going to set the alcohol down and I have to find a new foundation. I have to find a new religion. I have to find a new way of navigating the world. And it creates a very obsessive quality, which is kind of what you pointed out, that there was kind of an obsessiveness. And a lot of times with alcoholics who conform to this dry drunk idea, they'll bounce from thing to thing very obsessively, like Robert said, work, or I see things with sex and gambling, a lot of times compulsive areas there. And relationships can be part of it as well, depending on the person and their disposition. But it really is very much a, in religion, religiosity of the alcoholic about their alcohol, I think is really something to consider when we're talking about that. And one of the things that somatic experiencing does really effectively is it downregulates it long term, like Robert's talking about, it kind of fixes the problem. It downregulates the nervous system. Because what are we talking about? And this is what Lindy brought up earlier. What are we really looking for? We're really looking for the opportunity for co-regulation. And in the absence of co-regulation, I can auto-regulate with alcohol. And so that I think is the piece, you know. So what is the obsessive alcoholic in recovery looking for? Well, they're looking for co-regulation. That's one of the things AA actually does really, really well. You go to an AA meeting, everybody says lovely, nice things to each other for about an hour, and then they love each other. It's really very, on a base level, very co-regulating. What do you think, Lindy?
Well, I think, so I love what everybody is saying. And I guess for me, I think about dry drunk as people who kind of like change the behavior. They don't drink, but they don't really do any of the kind of like deeper changes like you were talking about. And so I think that the SE can really help people to kind of like get in and change from the nervous system up, like kind of like from the bottom up. And that can be so helpful. And so engaging our social engagement system is such a great way to be able to modulate between that, you know, high sympathetic and that freeze response. And so we need people in addiction, even if somebody isn't drinking, they can still be between those two incredible states. And so learning how to kind of like use what we call the vagal brake to be able to kind of like down regulate that, but in a healthy way, in a social engagement way, is such a really important thing. And so people can go to meetings and not participate. And I think some people who are kind of like in that dry drunk phase, right? Like 30 years I've been sober, just do this. They're very gruff, but they're not connected, they're not embodied. And so what we're looking for is to get people to start to connect. And to start to connect, you need to feel safe or safe enough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Coming on with that, Lorraine, that was a really a rich topic. I'll have you go back over to the other side. And guys, let's maybe take one more question, or do you just want to chat a little bit amongst yourselves for a while? I know you're having fun. It's the wonderful thing about these conversations, if I can just add, is that we get to gather people in fields who are meeting for the first time and getting to kind of share some affinity for the fact that we love working with nervous systems, and particularly this method and the field that you've decided to apply it to. And just the connection between you guys is really, it's really magnificent right now, really. I want to invite other people who are watching to get participating, not just watching, to consider if there's something that you, a practice area you work in that you'd like to share. I'm going to have Kiana, she'll be posting into the Q&A a link for you where you could complete the Speakers Bureau form for us. And that would let us know a little bit if you have a subject matter expertise that you may want to participate in some of these. In June, we anticipate that our subject matter will be around parenting and dealing with parent and child issues in the midst of the kind of global crisis that we're dealing with. And, you know, it keeps transitioning and changing, but it's there. Even when it's long past, it will still be there for some time. Those of us who work in trauma are well aware. So if you know someone who works in those fields, let them know about this. Help us find out. You can see we've got these 4 amazing humans today. So you guys, would you like one more question? Lorraine has a question. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Lorraine is who we just worked with. It looks like the next highest question on the list might be Sarah Martin. So I could ask her if she wants to come on, or would you like to just chat with yourselves a little bit, or should we go over? Why don't you lead me a little bit on how you're feeling for time and this conversation?
I vote questions. I'm enjoying them very much.
Fun, right? Yeah. What do you think if we go over time a little bit? When it gets about 12 minutes to the end, I start to think about wrapping up. But if we take another question, we probably go over about another 15 minutes. Would that be okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Totally.
I'm fine.
All right, participants, you're up for a little bit more. If you'd like to stay, we'll go over. Sarah, if you could raise your Sarah Martin, if you could raise your participant hand, if you'd be willing to come on, that would be great.
Basically, my question was around if any of you had experiences working with people while they're using. I worked at a safe injection site, And there were moments where we could find confidential sort of spaces when people wanted to sort of open up or share about some of their experiences. And I was really curious about what does it look like to do SE in those moments where, you know, for some people, they're already using opiates or some kind of downer. So they're already kind of down regulated in a way, but just sort of the synthetic regulation or the synthetic sort of nervous system controls that are happening when people are using. So I don't know if people have experience with that or just thoughts on what that could be like or how that could be useful. And I think it ties in a little bit with some other questions around using like psychoactive drugs and medication. And just thoughts on if any of y'all have thoughts on that.
I work on a methadone or opioid substitution treatment program. So of course, a lot of the clients I work with are medicated per se with quite high dose opiates. So in many ways, they're sort of down regulated, but in some ways they're more sort of shut down than perhaps down regulated, because they can still fire up when they're stressed or when something is, you know, when there's the appropriate trigger. And you know, what I found is that, you know, I found it very difficult to sit down and do it like a full SE session, but sometimes you can just introduce little tiny tidbits or, you know, just what one of my consult supervisors said, you know, SE by stealth sort of thing, because in many ways you mentioned the word therapy and what, you know, they're sort of scared off in a way because they don't want to go near any of that stuff that's sort of safely locked away. But what I found is just by doing small pieces and just you know, like even the VU sound, even just realizing that they can connect to the felt sense of their body in very small, simple ways can be really useful. And what I've often found is where they're very disconnected from their body, what I've often found what they are connected to is maybe their animals or pets, and often refer, you know, using their pets as a sort of a role model. And so even if they can't notice what's going on in themselves, they can often notice what's going on in their pets or animals and use that as a way of sort of helping them see how their pets self-regulate and use that as a way of introducing some of the concepts and connecting them in a way that may not be possible, you know, at that time. So I don't know if that's very helpful, but it is a challenge, definitely. But it's still possible to do that.
Yeah, in my practice, I usually use the time to lay a foundation of understanding and awareness, teaching them concepts, alternatives to using, as I put them. They might not take them, and it might take a while. Some people take it out right away, some take a while, but usually they come out to me, I finally got it. I finally understand what you were talking about. And it's like, so a lot of my clients are mandated and they're on opiate substitutes and stuff like that. And it's like, they really appreciate that I'm really not dismissing, the importance of them having that for themselves, right? That they need something. And I give them a little bit of hope that, yeah, maybe there is something else. And it's not what everybody's been packaging for them. That somehow it's a choice for them, somehow that they're weak, somehow they're whatnot. I come out this other thing, when something happened to you, and that, one day when you're ready, I'm going to give you some understandings about how to help yourself. And, I have many clients that's been the pathway, just giving them a little hope that there's like, I'm not going to take this away from you, right? And leave you with nothing and punish you until you stop using. I give you an understanding of where you are and what has happened and how it's affected you, and that you can actually heal yourself. This is not, you're not permanently like this. There's hope. It's going to take time. And where I work, we say 2 years at least for clients. Where I work also, I've worked for the health authority, and they used to dish out 6 sessions. And so you're supposed to stop using drugs and heal your trauma. And it's like, where I work, we say 2 years. We try, I mean, we say that's just, like a foundation. And it's like, and it's like, and it's like, because like I said, everybody comes from a different kind of thing. And like, there's different kinds of trauma that can affect people differently. And it's a puzzle. And some of them can really go to the core for people. Like sexual abuse is horrendous, right? And it's like, it violates internally and externally, and it's like, it's everybody's different. There's no one thing. And a lot of people, I believe, that are opioids, so there's a lot of endorphin things, and it's that they've never really been self-regulating, and opium comes around and it's that endorphin thing, right? It's, as Debra Trueax say, it's the hug, getting the hug that they've never really had, and they've always wanted and always needed as a child, right?
Yeah, it's a stable attachment relationship.
Yeah. And it's like, everybody's different. And I'm not going to rip that from somebody until they actually know that something can be different for them. That they believe that any attempt, because like, when my clients relapse, I don't punish them.
No.
I don't punish them. I don't blame them for relapsing. From my own history, the average is like 7 relapses for most people, right? But each time they get a little hope, they learn a little thing, and then they realize the consequences again. It's a learning thing for them, and they dig in a little bit deeper into investing in a little bit, trying something a little bit different they didn't try before. For me, that's how it works. They've had a lifetime of punishing themselves, and I don't need to come along and point out to them all their foibles, right? It's like so yeah, it's like, for me, it's, I think it's the time when I work with them, and I don't expect a lot for them, and these are concepts that people have, and they have had so many people shame them for being an addict, and it's like, and they need, on some level, they really believe they need this, and I need to take that time to work slowly with them, and to just make a safe space for them to have a different conversation, and that, I can't really do a lot of self-regulation with them. That's not my expectation, but it's introducing what is self-regulation, and that it can happen to them, and reassure them. I mean, maybe some others got some methods to work with people, and I love to hear that, when people are actively using either opiates or a substitute, have they had some successes with some exercises? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I sort of explain the medication or drugs as a bit like scaffolding on a building. If the building's broken, falling down or needs repair, you have to put the scaffolding up to keep the building, still functional. And you use the scaffolding for as long as you need it, but and then you decide what repairs need to be done, and work with them when they're ready to do so, and within their capacity to do so.
I think too, in response to your question specifically about what are some interventions that are sort of somatic experiencing oriented, I don't teach SE. I'm not a faculty member, so I can't necessarily answer, but I will say from my own experience, there's what SE is, and SE is working with a nervous system. And when a nervous system is, sort of externally regulated by a substance, there's not a lot of interventions that I know of that are helpful. I kind of take Robert's approach of planting seeds for later, but I've not found anything that is. I mean, sometimes I struggle to incorporate SE when people are on high doses of antipsychotics, even, let alone at an injection site where people are actively taking large doses of opiates. I'm not sure what an SE intervention would be, but the stuff Robert and stuff that's been talked about by Robert and Robina both sound pretty neat.
Well, and I guess what I would add is that I agree with what you're saying, and I think the only kind of like SE approach that I've come up with is for myself to stay embodied and regulated when I'm with a dysregulated system. And so remember that our systems are talking to each other. And so even if their system is pinging all over the place, if I can stay regulated, and man, that's a job. right? When you're with dysregulated systems. So if we can say, stay that way, and also have the intention that this person does have the capacity, maybe not the capacity, but the ability to move towards coherence if the conditions are right. So the conditions aren't right now, so they're using their substances, but I have hope for the future. And so when I can kind of like hold that in my regulated presence, I think that's about all we can do when people are still actively using. And so that's what I would say about that.
Oh man, I really like, it's like the second really awesome thing you've said today, Lindy, that I've really enjoyed. You talked about that piece, and it's the second time you said something, and I think I wish I'd answered that very first question with what Lindy said. So
Yeah.
the ability, the training in SE, the training about how to regulate my own nervous system, and the idea that my nervous system connects with the client. You know, in graduate school in the States anyway, we're taught that rapport is the single most important factor in client outcomes. And rapport doesn't really mean anything. In an SE, now I understand what it means, right? It's the capacity to regulate my system and be connected at the same time.
Mhm.
So,
Sarah, I think you got some pretty incredible feedback to that question. Would you agree? Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna have you go back to the attendees. Thanks for coming online with us. Oops, sorry, you're still, if you want to say thank you, I didn't mean to keep you stuck in mute.
Thank you.
And it's sort of, it's fascinating and perfect to me, Greg, that you just went there, because I'm kind of thinking about a question to wrap us up, and it's hard. I mean, what's really here is that this topic, this subject of focus is so perfect with somatic experiencing as a practice, right? In my own world, working with addictions, I'm thinking about how many people who might be seeking recovery, or a therapist who wants to work with people in recovery, are going to look at cognitive behavior therapies, are going to try to correct bad behavior, are going to, just try to get to like, what's the old story of the old shame pattern that you're repeating, or how is this because of what mom and dad did, and now how you're choosing, and everything's based on our thinking and our behavior, which is not to say those are not legitimate and really important approaches. But I'm hearing you guys really describe how working with the nervous system, like it's funny, I've just been tracking, as you've been saying, it's just working with the nervous system just has no shame or judgment associated with it. Like I just hear you presenting a very shame-free recovery path. And so I'm curious about if you've experienced, or you have a thought that there are better outcomes for people who are seeking recovery support from therapeutic practitioners or recovery centers or anything, if they have this. Greg, you're not the only person who runs a recovery center in the country who said, oh my gosh, if I didn't have somatic experiencing practitioners, it would be a completely different. I know we're very active with the Meadows too. I know you know that. Could you just speak about the difference between outcomes if you do work with the nervous system of someone who's addicted versus if you don't?
Well, I'll just jump in and say, I think that when we take the nervous system into consideration, and that we look at kind of like what part of the nervous system is dominant right now. And so if we want people to learn, they need to feel safe or safe enough. And so if we can bring them there, the information is going to go in. And so if someone is up in activation and they're learning and they're like, yeah, but they're activated, it's actually not going in. So we might say they're not able to metabolize it because they're not in the right kind of like nervous system platform. And so for me, I just think about helping people to get into ventral and social engagement so they can be safe enough so information can go in.
that's a great way of putting it. We have, at my treatment center, we have 4 pillars of recovery. The first one is biological with medication-assisted treatment. The second one is physiological. We have a exercise program that is based around CrossFit. It's not CrossFit because we don't have licensed CrossFit people who work for us, but it's very similar to CrossFit, and it has a collective element to it. And the third one is the 12-step programs, for reasons I mentioned earlier. The 12-step functions as a kind of a surrogate attachment when I lose the attachment of my addiction. And then the last one is trauma healing. And You know, it's like a table, a three-legged table is not, it's not going to function as effectively as it could. And we have absolutely seen a dramatic increase in our outcomes. And the way we measure outcomes are so hard to measure in addiction because it's really easy to take your study and skew it in the direction that you want it to go. And all you have to do to see that is see these guys at Harvard who are fussy with the 12-step programs, and they talk about a 10% recovery program. Well, that's because they're defining addiction as abstinence. And then you see all these treatment centers who tell you they have 70% outcomes, and that's they're getting a little liberal with their definition as well. So for me, when I talk about outcomes, I talk about our clients who involve themselves in our outpatient program on an ongoing basis, right? So if you leave treatment and you stay in outpatient, there's a good chance that even if you're struggling to have a relapse or two, you're still moving in the right direction. And a much, much higher percentage of the people who address their trauma healing while they're in treatment go on to outpatient. We are still measuring that right now, but the outcome, there's not a question in that regard, and it's a lot of fun to watch. Great question.
I think in New Zealand, we've got a long way to go in terms of emphasising the value of trauma-informed care. But I think one area where it certainly is starting to declare itself is the combination of addiction and chronic pain, and those two working together. And with there is some movement in an understanding the connection between the two, obviously. And this is where body-based type therapies, such as somatic experiencing, seem to be far more effective than just the top-down approach. And I think it's by continuing to work to emphasize that is going to help. And I think, I talk about the dark trinity, which is trauma, chronic pain, and addiction. And, often they're placed in the too hard basket. But when you introduce a completely different approach in conjunction with all the other sort of mainstream options that are available, it can make a difference. But I think, we've just got to keep plugging away and doing it a piece at a time until it becomes more recognised. And of course, funding is always an issue, but we'll continue to work towards that.
For me, like I said, I got to design a program. So, I used some of the seeking safety stuff, but I've adapted it for the now because it was written in 2004. But safety, but I use the medicine wheel teaching as a point of view of safety. And it's very hard for people to heal their nervous system if they're not safe, if they're constantly putting themselves in danger, they're constantly in poor relationships, they're constantly homeless. So safety being the foundation, so people can listen, because then the temperature comes down. And the CBT can seek in a little bit more, and then I go to a place where I teach them some mindfulness, but trauma-informed mindfulness, because the regular mindfulness doesn't work for my clients. It's like the expectation how somehow they're going to sit there for 10 minutes and, and do what you tell them to do. It's just like not going to happen, right? So trauma-informed, as I put it, right? The idea that I tell them, this is the hardest thing for you to do, but I'm going to ask you to just do for 5 seconds, right? To try it out. And if you keep doing it for 5 seconds during the day, or while you're doing the dishes, or while you're doing some other activity, because you can't sit still, but just try to be more aware of what's going on in a mindfulness way, and teaching what mindfulness is, and then, those are the kind of things that I love to teach. And then I teach like the 4 agreements. I don't know if you know the 4 agreements, but oh my God, they've helped me so much and to understand and not to get so wired up that I want to go use, right? And then, nonviolent communication, changing the language, finding out what really is important in a conversation, why are you feeling the fact that you have needs? Your needs weren't met. Now you got to meet your needs as part of recovery. And then, the whole idea of, with, like you say, she's kind of asked without the idea of SE, but I tell you that it was just the cherry on the top for me in the sense, because everything worked so much better. When I started teaching the SE, and the client comes in there with the attitude that somebody's going to blame me. But oh, you're saying something happened to me. You believed me.
Hmm.
You know, nobody believed me when I was a kid. Nobody believed me, you know, at all. And I'm sitting and you actually don't just believe me if something happened to you. You believe in me,
Hmm.
right? And my potential and my purpose, you know, and I have something to offer the world, that I'm not just stuck being an addict the rest of my life,
Hmm.
you know? And, you know, the SE allows them to hear that so much easier, you know, because it's a different approach. It's the spirit of SE for me, you know, that we carry the, like somebody said earlier, we'll carry the hope for you until you can believe in that hope yourself, kind of thing, right? Your potential. Okay, so yeah.
Spirit of SE, we will carry the hope for you until you are able to carry it yourself.
Yeah.
Robert, my goodness, everything each one of you has said in our time together is just really nothing short of extraordinary. Y'all know I'm an enthusiastic person. I know that that's not a hidden factor, but I am moved beyond with this session today. I really have found this to be an incredible conversation, and I'm sure all the participants who stayed with us and those who will be watching the video recap afterwards will certainly concur. What you have all provided us is some really exceptional ways to look at life. I mean, specifically addiction and working with addiction, but you've given us much more than that. For people who are not SE practitioners, I think you can see it's the water this group swims in. So we can't help but talk about it. That's why we asked in the beginning if you were or you were not, because I knew this group was going to go there, because it's just such a profound modality for any of us studying it and utilizing it. You can learn more about us at traumahealing.org/training, where you can see the different levels of training you do, starting with basics. I didn't do a good job fundraising. We checked the funding. Nobody dropped a dime yet today. So I'm just saying that, not a guilt trip or anything. Wouldn't do that. Nope. Sure. This is an NPR, but just saying. Here's my next thing. This is how I might know you're interested. If you love this kind of stuff, send us a note at publichealth@traumahealing.org that tells us a little bit about what you got out of this session today. If there was something here for you that was meaningful, your feedback is really important to us too. Sure, your donations would be communicative. We all know that, but your feedback would be too. An appreciation for you being with us. If you are interested in becoming a student, if you're thinking, I want to know more about this and I want to make a real difference in the world of substance abuse and addiction recovery, I would like to sponsor you free access to the SE Basics. I got special permission to do that today, and I'm very excited. So you can email us at publichealth@traumahealing.org and say, I would really like to take that basics. It's a 3-hour introductory program done by different SCPs around the country who are assistants in our programs. And then they do basics. So you can get a little taste, a little touch and feel. And then if you'd like to do the program, it is a 3-year program. People get CEUs in various professions, and we'd be more than happy to help you find your way to that. If you're in the SE community doing this work, thank you for everything that you're doing. If you're not in the SE community doing this work, thank you too. Like, there's just no shortage of need for support to go around. We're all so in this together, providing each other the hope that we need to take the steps we need to have the healed and whole, capable lives we're each called to live. To learn more about Lindy and Greg and Robert and Robina, when we post this on YouTube, we will have their bios underneath it, as well as their websites and contact information, so you can get some direct connection with each one of these. Are all 4 of you up for being contacted?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Answering
Yeah.
In
questions.
fact, if my one of my trauma therapists relapsed yesterday. So if anybody wants to contact me and move to rural Arizona, let me know.
All good treatment recovery centers are. Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for being with us. If there's anything you'd like to say to close us out, let me know and we can just wrap it up with you all. I just thank you on behalf of the Institute, on behalf of Marv Tuttle, our Executive Director, on behalf of Dion and Kiana and Danny, who've been working behind the scenes with us to make this happen today, Rebecca for helping us get it out, who would love for you all to become members and get more connected with us. Just thank you for all that you are and all that you offer the world.